every collector faces the same question. What cards do I want to collect? There are some collectors out there that have such a laser sharp focus and unwavering pursuit of a particular player, a team, or group of players. And then there's other collectors out there that sort of float along. We spend dozens of hours and hundreds of dollars buying cards that we don't really have a personal connection with. And we revisit that collection after a while and notice that the collection isn't something that we're overly proud of. We don't look back at it with fond memories, and we just have regrets. So with that as our backdrop, I decided to put together a little framework on how to develop your player PC. We're going to be discussing a couple questions that I used to try and figure out who to PC when I was first getting back into the hobby. And we'll also touch upon a couple of pitfalls, things to look out for if you're just getting back into collecting sports cards. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Cardi-C. Thank you for stopping by my channel. If you're new here and you enjoyed today's content, make sure to hit that thumbs up button and consider subscribing for future content. One of the things I would like to do on my channel this year is give a platform to newer content creators out there that might not have a lot of subscribers. So let me know in the comments below if you are one of those newer content creators, or if you know of a channel that is putting out great stuff, they're paying it forward, and they just need a little bit of recognition. And I'd really like to give those other content creators a platform to get their voices heard. So before we hop into this framework, we have to ask ourselves a very important and maybe uncomfortable question. How much do I care about the long-term value of my collection? Wherever you sit on the spectrum from collector to investor, one fact remains the same. The value of sports cards fluctuates over the long term. Short term, long term, the value of sports cards fluctuate.
Well, yeah, took you long enough.
There are some collectors out there who view their PC as their ticket to an early retirement, or as a way to build up wealth that they can hand on eventually to their loved ones. There are other people out there that have a personal connection of a player that has such a narrow collector base that it's very rare or very unlikely that that collection is ever going to build up value. Deciding how important maintaining the value of your collection will be over the long term will be vital to helping you decide which player you want to collect. Now, with that behind us, let's hop into the specific questions that we're going to refer to as our framework today. And the first question is, which players do I have a personal connection with? Forging a personal connection with a player is vital to ensuring the long-term sustainability of you becoming a player collector. By forging a personal connection, I don't mean hopping into a player's DMs or having a story about when you caught a foul ball from that player growing up. I mean something that can connect you to that player and makes you personally invested in their on-field and off-field performance. Otherwise, after 6 to 8 months or so, you're just going to lose the urge to stop collecting that player. To demonstrate what I'm talking about, I'm going to give you the reasons behind the 2 Red Sox players that I PC. And the first up is Nomar Garciaparra. Now, this one's very simple. Nomar was my favorite player growing up. I would copy all the superstitions, playing Little League. We would play best plays in the backyard, and I would recreate his jumping throws across the baseball diamond. He was simply the best player that inspired me to be the greatest baseball player I could be. When I think of my childhood and need a healthy dose of nostalgia, Nomar is the player to get it done. Number 2 is Ted Williams. Now, forging a personal connection with someone you never saw play is a little bit harder, but for me, it all started as a kid watching the 1999 All-Star Game. I saw my favorite players at the time go out and pay tribute and respect to Ted Williams. I quickly learned about the 406 batting average in 1941, but those things alone weren't enough to sort of forge a personal connection with the player. So I'll put a card in the video somewhere to a video I put out about Ted Williams and a card that I picked up, his 1951 Bowman. But in preparing for that video, I actually read his autobiography and found out more about who Ted Williams was as a person and as a baseball player. And I quickly grew another level of respect for a player that wanted to be the greatest hitter that ever lived. He got done dirty by the Boston media, but all he wanted to do was go out there and be the best hitter he could. He wanted to fish and he wanted to hunt. Those were the 3 things he wanted out of life, and he did them well. And I really bonded with that drive, that focus to be the greatest hitter that ever lived. So that's the first question. Which players do I have a personal connection with? The second question of our framework is, do I respect that player on the court and off the court? And just like finding a partner in life, it makes it a hell of a lot easier if you have respect for that other person.
I can respect that.
If you're operating under the mentality that this player just needs to stick to insert sport here, then that's going to be a very hard mindset to overcome if you're trying to collect this player on a long-term basis. Now, before you jump headfirst into a player, do a little bit of research on who they are off the field. Let's take the Sultan of SWAT, Babe Ruth, as an example. Now, Babe Ruth was a notorious womanizer. In the 1925 season, he actually missed an extended period of time because of poor diet and syphilis. But outside of his womanizing ways, Babe Ruth was actually known as the world's most kindest role model for kids. He made a concerted effort to stay outside of Yankee Stadium and sign autographs and baseballs for kids hours on end. He realized through a tough upbringing how important it was to just be there for kids. So this is all things that you need to know before you go out and decide Babe Ruth is going to be at the core of my player collection. So that's question number 2. Do I respect this player on the field and off the field? Now, number 3 is our final question, our final guardrail, and it's a 2-parter, and it's probably the most important. It is, do I enjoy collecting this player's cards? Part 1. And then part 2, which cards of that player do I enjoy collecting? Now, if you don't enjoy collecting a player's cards, it's really a non-starter, and you can jump back up to question 1 and start all over again. But what I see with newer collectors is they're going out and they're picking up cards just to pick up cards because other people are telling them it's the right thing to do if you're going to be collecting this player. Take, for example, my player collection of Nomar Garciaparra. His most recognizable card is probably his 1992 Topps Traded XRC. It's the card of him in a USA Olympic uniform. It's his most iconic card, but I don't really like it. It's not the most flattering picture of the world. It's pretty boring. I try and stick to refractors, chrome, and foil cards of cards that I think look cool. I'm not going to go out and buy a Topps Finest Nomar card just because I need it for the collection. I'm going out and buying it because I take joy out of adding that card to my personal collection. So those are the 3 sort of framework, guidelines, guardrails that I've put up to help focus my efforts in my collecting on players that I enjoy collecting. But there are also a couple things to keep in mind that if we don't keep in mind, it's very easy to get lost along the way. And that first piece of advice is don't collect a player or a card just because everyone else is collecting them, and don't get caught up in the hype of a particular player. There are no rules to collecting. You aren't considered an inferior player collector if you choose to pass over cards that other people are rapidly adding to their PC. It's really easy for you to say, I need that silver prism for my collection. And then a couple months later, you hear from the market that, oh, silver prisms are going out of style. We're going to focus on optic hollows now. And then you look at it and say, oh, I need those optic hollows for my collection now, because the market's just going to scoop them up. Because let me tell you something. There's always going to be a next silver prism, a next optic hollow, and then years from now, you're going to be looking back at your PC with somewhat bitter memories that you weren't the one making the decision about buying this card, but you are letting the market dictate which cards you should be picking up for your collection. Taking a phrase from Ben of About the Cards podcasts, if you didn't want it yesterday, then you got to question yourself why you want it today. The same concept goes for player collecting as well. If you're picking up cards of Zion and you forged a personal connection with him, you respect his effort on the court and off the court, and you really enjoy collecting his cards, not flipping them for value, that's a totally separate video, then all aboard. Let's go collect Zion cards together.
All aboard!
But if you are just floating from the next it guy to the next it guy, then what's going to happen is you're going to end up with a collection of Andrew Wiggins and Michael Beasleys and Derrick Roses. And I can guarantee you're not going to be as happy about pulling those cards or collecting those cards as you were during their draft year. So make sure you're forging that personal connection with them. And our final piece of advice tonight is just to know your limits. And unless our name is Jeff Bezos or Steve Ballmer, we're really not going to be able to afford to grab each and every single one of these cards. Don't go and over leverage yourself buying cards that are supposed to be an escape from reality. Be thoughtful and be deliberate in the cards that you're collecting, and take joy and happiness from the struggle along the way. So that's it. There's no hard and fast rules to collecting sports cards or identifying who you want to PC. But these items have helped me, and they've helped me put some guardrails up to my collecting so that I'm not wasting my time or effort on cards that I'm ultimately not going to get any satisfaction out of. I hope this framework can help you discover who your PC player should be and ignites that passion in the hobby that we're all searching for. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comments below who you PC and why you PC them. And if you know of any sport card channels that you're really enjoying, or you're a small content creator yourself, leave a link or let me know the channel name in the comments below. But that's all I got for you guys tonight. I'm Cardi-C. We'll catch you guys later.